In 2013, a construction project out of Charleston, South Carolina, unearthed the skeletal remains of 36 individuals. Their DNA was taken, but on further investigation, no records of their identity were uncovered. But still, there was one interesting fact. These remains dated back to the 1700s and had African genealogy. Is it possible that they were all buried together? What was their history? This wasn't the first time such a case was found. There was yet another discovery just 3 years before in 2010 at a beachside construction site in the Caribbean island Saint Martin. At this time, researchers found 3 skeletons. With a closer look and based on the DNA they could obtain, their background revealed that they had come a long way from home. One was from Cameroon, the other was from Ghana, and the third was from Nigeria. All 3 of them had been tied to historical dates close to the transatlantic slave trade. Could all of them be connected in some way? And why was this discovery so significant? Before we dive deeper into things, let's go back in history to a time when enslaved people were traded as a commodity. In reference to North America, this happened from the 16th century well into the 19th century. This was the era of the transatlantic slave trade. It all started in the 1400s, when Portugal and Spain started a New World process, taking raw materials from countries with plentiful and rich resources. This led to the conquest and colonization of countries with much poorer economic status but plentiful resources. To successfully fulfill their plans, they still needed to obtain the available raw materials, which required a great deal of manual labor. At the time, enslaved Indians were favorable since their numbers met the demand requirements. However, as the growing demand for labor to work in plantations went up, the Europeans needed more resources, causing them to look towards Africa. Africa had untapped human resources that matched the needs of countries like Britain, Spain, and America. Sooner or later, manual labor took the form of slavery, and enslaved Africans replaced the enslaved Indians, making them a major part of the slave trade. By the 1600s, the transatlantic slave trade had started to form, requiring 3 continents' worth of contributions. Africa provided the workforce, America was where raw materials were harvested, and Europe was where raw materials were turned into finished, quality goods. These 3 continents were part of the 3-tiered transatlantic slave trade. But there was more to it. The slave trade was one of the most horrific chapters in all of human history. Looking back, what happened during those times is a haunting reminder of what greed can manifest into. During that period, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes and brutally captured. Some were taken from village raidings, some through kidnapping, and others were simply bought from African traders. Once caught and captured, these enslaved people were forced to march long distances to coastlines, where they would be chained up and subjected to extremely inhuman treatment. After that, they were lined up and packed into full ships. Some of the vessels had thousands at a time. The ships were not kept in adequate sanitary conditions either. Most of the enslaved people were crammed together shoulder to shoulder. They were rarely given food, and they were rarely even allowed to go outside. Not everyone was able to survive this voyage. Many died due to the horrendous conditions, but those who lived were sold into America's slave system. Enslaved Africans were then sold at auction to the highest bidder. Once purchased, they would often be subjected to grueling work on plantations, and some even had to endure harsh physical punishments from their owners' hands. Despite the brutality of the slave trade, enslaved Africans did not sit idly by as passive victims. Many resisted their enslavement and kept hope alive through acts of rebellion, sabotage, and escape. By the 19th century, the transatlantic slave trade finally came to an end as the abolishment movement gained momentum and governments started to outlaw the practice. But between the 16th and 19th centuries, it was estimated that over 12 million Africans were shipped across the Atlantic. Some unofficial records state that the number was likely much higher. We can all agree that the slave trade was a dark chapter in American history, and today, Many descendants of former slaves have found a way to trace their roots back to Africa. The answer lies in genetics and genealogy. But before we look into that, let us know your thoughts on this terrible slave trade. We would love to hear from our viewers. And be sure to subscribe to You So Crazy if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. Now, let's get back to it. DNA testing has revolutionized the way we study our history, and this is seen even more so in genealogy. With advances in DNA analysis, it is now possible to trace a person's ancestry back to certain regions of the world, giving valuable insight into the lives and experiences of our ancestors. In recent years, DNA testing has played an important role in uncovering the hidden histories of formerly enslaved Africans in America. By analyzing individuals' genetics, researchers can identify their likely geographic origins in the African continent, and in some cases, even trace their family lineage back to specific villages and clans. This type of research is particularly valuable for the descendants of slaves, who have long been denied access to their cultural heritage and family history. By using DNA testing to trace their ancestry, they can finally reclaim a part of their identity that was taken from them by the brutal, lasting legacy of slavery. One popular DNA testing company, 23andMe, has given huge insight into the African slave trade. Stephen Micheletti, a population geneticist at 23andMe, led the study in finding the origin of enslaved Africans in America. Before the study was carried out, historians and researchers believed that most African slaves in America were brought over from the west coast of Africa. What the study revealed, though, surprised and startled everyone. From the DNA evidence collected, they found that of every 50,000 people, about 30,000 had direct ties to African ancestry. Even more surprising was the fact that Americans had a higher percentage of ancestry from Nigeria than other parts of Africa. This meant that many enslaved Africans came from Central and Eastern Africa, not the coast. This was a startling find for researchers and other historians, and most of them could not believe the amount of Nigerian ancestry present in the United States today. But this wasn't everything. The 23andMe platform was also able to reunite families that were torn apart by the slave trade through DNA testing. Additionally, it has also helped identify long-living descendants of enslaved individuals and connected families that have been separated for over a century, offering closure and healing for those who have been denied access to their family history. Some projects are also unearthing some interesting stories. One notable example of this type of research is the Georgetown Memory Project, whose goal is to trace the descendants of enslaved Africans sold by Georgetown University in 1838. During that time, Georgetown University sold 272 slaves to Louisiana plantations. There were men, women, and children among these people, but it was unknown whatever became of them. The project has revealed that thousands of their descendants are still alive today, and that they are all related to one another through their ancestry. Another ambitious project carried out in Charleston, South Carolina, aims to use DNA analysis to trace the African roots of the 36 people we mentioned at the beginning of this video that were found buried. This project started in 2019 and is a joint effort by the College of Charleston, the Medical University of South Carolina, and the International African American Museum. Their goal is to find out if the remains of the 36 people buried in unmarked graves at the former city jail in Charleston have ancestral roots in America today. The bones were uncovered from a detention center built for slaves during the late 1700s. But the project needs to function in a multiple-step process, since tracing the ancestry could prove challenging. In the first step, researchers would have to collect DNA samples from the bones, which would then need to be sent to a laboratory for analysis. From there, the DNA would have to be compared to genetic samples from current populations in Africa, keeping in mind the goal of identifying genetic markers, if any, that can help pinpoint the individual's likely origins on a geographic level. Once the DNA analysis is complete, the researchers will have to use genealogical research to try and identify living descendants of the individuals. The hope is that by tracing the family trees, the researchers will be able to learn more about the lives and experiences of enslaved Africans in Charleston during the late 1700s. But why are these researchers going to such efforts to learn about what happened in the past? Well, there are several reasons. First, it represents an important step in the ongoing effort to uncover the hidden history of Africans in the United States. By tracing the roots of these individuals, the project is shedding light on the rich cultural heritage and diversity of Africans and current Black Americans, which was erased by the brutality of slavery. Second, the project has the potential to help reunite families that were once torn apart. The living descendants of the individuals buried in Charleston, the project could provide closure for families that have been separated for generations. And finally, the project is a powerful reminder of the resilience and strength of the human spirit. Despite the horrors of slavery, the individuals buried in Charleston maintained a rich connection to their African roots, and their descendants continue to carry their legacy today. The project is a tribute to their memory and is a testament to the power of genealogy to uncover the unspoken histories of our past. It is evident that DNA testing has changed the game by offering a powerful tool for uncovering the hidden histories of enslaved Africans. Through genealogical research and DNA analysis, researchers can trace the roots of formerly enslaved individuals back to Africa, shedding light on their cultural heritage and family histories. This research has the potential to transform the way we think about slavery as a whole. So what do you think about these genetic projects? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to You So Crazy for more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.